It's the first Thursday in August, and you tuned in to Cinema Hits and Misses. I'm Dawn.
And I'm Ryan.
And I'm John, finally back in studio.
Welcome back, John.
Thank you.
Here at WMPG 90.9 FM.
And if you want to call in, because now John's here, so we got two phone lines. You can call in at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. What movies are we talking about today, guys?
So we're talking about Atomic Blonde and A Ghost Story.
Ooh. The A movies.
Yes.
Want to start off with Atomic Blonde?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
All right. So Atomic Blonde is based on the Coldest City graphic novels and is set in the late 1980s Berlin just before the wall fell. It follows MI6 agent Lorraine Broughton in her quest to find out who killed a fellow agent and find a hidden spy list that he was protecting. Atomic Blonde is told in flashback, mostly from Lorraine, who is in an interrogation room being questioned by her MI6 boss and a CIA representative. There's also someone behind the mirrored glass, but isn't there always? Lorraine was sent to East Berlin to meet with a covert operative, David Percival, an MI6 agent who's gone a bit local with his undercover work. From the start, she's at a disadvantage with the KGB pegging her before she's able to make contact with Percival, and Percival who seems to have his own agenda. And Lorraine has two missions. Officially, find the lost list of spies and protect Spyglass, the defecting agent. Unofficially, she must find out what happened to the murdered MI6 operative who's trying to bring Spyglass in the list out of East Berlin. With communist agents in pursuit, a sketchy partner, and a seductive French agent in the mix, it's a challenging time for espionage on either side of the wall. Guys, what did you think of Atomic Blonde?
I really enjoyed it. I had a lot of fun with it. I liked the director, David Leitch, who had done John Wick, or co-directed John Wick and co-directed John Wick 2. I didn't get to see John Wick 2, and he's doing Deadpool 2 next year. I thought, he's a stunt director, he's a stunt coordinator, so he knows how to do stunts, and oh my god, like, it's very gritty. Like, we'll get to probably the most intense fight in the movie, but throughout the whole film, like, the different fight scenes are it reminded me about the Raid Redemption, where you feel like the punches. It is very campy at sometimes. There's one part where you do hear the Wilhelm scream of one of the guys, and if you're not familiar with the Wilhelm scream, it's like in a bunch of old movies, like Indiana Jones and Star Wars, and it's like that weird yell that kind of is out of place. But I had a lot of fun with it. John, what about you?
I liked it. I didn't love it. I think there's a lot to like about it, though. It's definitely, I've heard a lot of people say, it's like more style over substance, and I can agree with that. I think the action is certainly like one of the strongest points, and backed up by David Leitch's directing and Charlize Theron as well, who can like maintain a lot, or what appears to be she's doing a lot of her own stunts, which is like remarkable, I think.
I mean, definitely a kick butt type of movie.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
Yeah, like you said, John, I think it is more style than substance and story, but it's a fun ride. I really enjoyed it. I mean, I get an idea of who a double agent was early by one of the lines, so that's we're kind of used to looking and listening for those things. Will an everyday viewer catch it? Maybe not. But it was fun to go through the intrigue and set in a period of paranoia, because it's heightened. Well, they're calling her Charlize Theron the female Bond, which may not be accurate. Maybe more Jason Bourne-ish.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Sorry. Yeah. No. Oh, I would definitely agree with that. Because I think it was definitely more entertaining than a James Bond movie. I'm not a huge James Bond fan, but saying Jason Bourne, I think the combat, because with James Bond only in like the earlier like Daniel Craig movies, you kind of see like the more like fighting and grittiness to it. So I definitely think that it's more close to the Jason Bourne, but she's definitely a really amazing action heroine. I mean, we've seen her in like Mad Max Fury Road, and I think that this film just even like heightens like her talent for it.
Yeah, and even back in the day, Ian Flux, which
that's right,
wasn't as well executed as you may have wanted, but you knew she had the potential there. And I think it took someone of her gravitas. I mean, she's taken on gritty roles before, and here in Atomic Blonde, she just has that iciness, but also there's a vulnerability. So I think she plays that well, and I think the interplay between her and James McAvoy as Percival goes well.
Yeah.
Yeah, James McAvoy should certainly get credit as well. He's just so entertaining to watch. He's like a wild card. He's really all over the place. You don't really know like who he's with, even though you think it may be like one way or the other. He could be on his own. It's really hard to say. But they're both him and Theron had like great chemistry on screen. It's like they played off each other really well. I'm looking through my list. There's one thing I really like is the look of it and how there's like a lot of use of neon. Like bring some necessary color, because you could definitely, like with a drab like environment like Berlin and at the time of the fall of the wall, it could have just been gray, and just adding like a little bit of like 80s flair, but not making it like so overtly like we're 80s. Like it made it just stand out just enough, but not enough to be like make you stand back and go like, oh wait a minute.
Yeah, and to jump on to the fact mentioning about the 80s is that this movie does a really good job of using music, very similar to like Guardians of the Galaxy, where they choose the right pieces of music that came out around the time. So you have like 99 Left Balloons, you have I believe Iran.
Flock of Seagulls.
Yes. I think
Voices Carry.
yes. Thank you.
Till Tuesday.
So yeah, and they use it so well. Like in the there's a lot of good juxtaposition between the music and the action sequences. So it makes it even more fun. I forget what song plays during the big fight scene that's in a corridor that's done in one take all the way into an alleyway into a car.
Was there though?
There was music in the car,
but not in the corridor. No.
But I'm just trying to remember what that song was.
That was Iran.
It was Iran. So yeah, it kind of like works with the scene by the end of it, because it just gets more intense as the scene keeps progressing.
And the cool thing about the music was they played off where it was coming from.
Yes.
So the scene where Sofia Boutella's character is listening on headphones, so it has that sound effect that then goes into full screen. Same thing with the boombox.
Yeah. Oh. Yeah.
And it's funny you mentioned Guardians of the Galaxy, because what ties both this Atomic Blonde and Guardians of the Galaxy is also a soundscape by Tyler Bates.
Oh yes, that's right. Yes. Yep.
And Tyler Bates tied in with writer Kurt Johnstad for 300.
Oh wow.
So there's a lot of intertwining here. Of course, I was geeking on that because I really like how Tyler Bates does a soundscape, and I thought that they did well with that here. And that we're talking about is Atomic Blonde here on Cinema Hits and Misses. If you've seen that or our next movie, A Ghost Story, you want to give us a call at 780-4909. That's 780-4909. We're here till 8:30 with John Ryan and Dawn in the studio.
Yeah, to continue commenting, like we've talked a little bit about the action, but there's really like one scene that really stands out. Yeah, like almost had like a raid kind of vibe to it just because of the setting.
Yeah.
Where it's set in a stairway corridor, and it goes on for a long time, and it's so much fun to watch. And one of the cool things about it is like you actually feel like the battles, like they're getting fatigued as it's going on. You actually like feel the wear and tear. Whereas like you see some movies, you're like, oh, they're just like invincible. There's no weakness to them, and I think they presented that in that scene real well, because it's just relentless, like nonstop action. It's great.
It's not like the chair scene in Bourne Supremacy that just like Jason Bourne can't die.
You definitely see the fatigue in both Charlize Theron's character and the KGB agents, and the continuous handheld shot, moving around with it, and there are times that we get real picky on fight scenes because of the cutting on this.
Yeah.
I think the editing.
Yeah.
I mean, how they did the fight scenes, the extended edits, show both a credit to the editor, but also to the acting talent and the director here, the stunts, because you have talent capable of that kind of motion. So you don't have to do fast intercut close-ups. You can go a distance and see the action.
Yeah, another sequence that I enjoyed was in a movie theater when Charlize Theron's trying to get like information, and she's just walking behind the screen because like everyone runs out, and you see like a nice silhouette of her trying to beat up one of the KGB agents, and for not just fighting, but for kind of gore, like she finds like very imaginative ways of hurting these guys, whether it's like a corkscrew or just like a shelf
A
unit
high heel?
or high heel. I think it was definitely there's a lot of more imagination brought into this than a James Bond or a Jason Bourne film, which I think that's probably why I enjoyed it more. Like you definitely felt the adrenaline going, and I think that's why I liked it. There was one nitpick I had, which is kind of just for me, was that I could notice that it was shot in Berlin, which is where Civil War was shot, and there's an underpass at the beginning of the film that there's a car chase sequence, and it's the same underpass that they use a car chase sequence in Civil War. So I was like, oh, that's that movie. Oh wait, this is 1989, not present day. Oh, whoops, I can see that. But I think that was just it for me.
Yeah, they're really my main criticism. So like, I agree with you about the music and how it's used. I felt like there were some moments though where I felt like someone just left their '80s playlist turned on. There's a good example where Charlize is walking into a bar and you hear a particular song. I don't remember the name of it, but then a lighter gets pulled out in front of her, and then all of a sudden I just hear like background piano music, and that just felt a little jarring. But there's like a couple of moments like that. I still think the soundtrack's good. Just to me, it felt like, oh, I feel like we're just leaving the playlist on, and it's not as like in your face about it, I guess, as other movies like Suicide Squad would be. Like probably a recent example that I can think of. And I think my only other real criticism is just like there's moments where I just didn't really care that much about the story. It wasn't like that intriguing to me, but the action was cool, so that kept me interested for a while.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's really a truly 100% likable character here.
No.
So, I mean, there are shades of why you might like a certain character, why you might like a Lorraine, or you might like Percival.
I think the most likable character would be who's the French agent?
Delphine?
Yeah, Delphine. I think because like you could relate to her because you could tell like, okay, she's in over her head, but she's just like kind of like the younger of the three.
And, you know, it's kind of refreshing to see that, where we're seeing Sofia Boutella in such really stronger roles where her character is really in charge of things. So to see her in this potentially lesser in control situation as more of a naive agent.
She also felt like the Bond girl, I guess, kind of like how like she's introduced and
And we'll definitely say that it's rated R.
Oh yeah.
Action, sexuality, language. It's all there.
They run the gambit.
They run the gamut. So, you know, again, written by Kurt Johnstad, directed by David Leitch, starring Charlize Theron, James McAvoy, Toby Jones, Sofia Boutella, and John Goodman. For me, I'm glad I saw it in a theater. I like the big screen look of it and the sound of it.
Yeah, I would recommend people seeing if they want to see an action movie. I really hope it does well because I think it could be. I mean, it would be interesting to see a sequel and just to see where this character goes.
Yeah, like I'm glad I saw it. I don't think I wasted my money at all. But I guess the question is, would I watch it again? And my answer would probably be no. I'd only watch like that long action sequence because I really think that's just the true standout of the film. But that's just me. If you're really interested in looking for like a decent action movie, I think you'll find that with this one for sure.
Yeah, and something that's not a tentpole franchise.
No.
Sequel number 2, 3, 4.
True.
You guys, you ready for a ghost story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right. C and M, these are the characters played by Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara, are a married couple who are getting ready to move out of their house and go somewhere new. When C dies in a car crash, M must figure out how to move on. At the hospital, C's body is seen walking through the world, but not seen by anyone. He also wears a ghost-like sheet. When M finally leaves C, he is still left in the afterlife, but must also try to move on while staying trapped in the house, unable to leave, and must watch the many people who now live in his home while trying to find a way out. A Ghost Story is directed and written by David Lowery, and again stars Casey Affleck and Rooney Mara. So, guys, what did you think about Ghost Story?
Well, before I give my opinion, I think it's maybe like more of an interpretation thing. I
Yep.
never really thought as the ghost was trapped.
Mm-hmm.
Which is more like it was like a decision to stay there. But I mean, that's just how I felt. Like
Mhm.
the thing is, you really can't tell with this kind of film
It's
because
a very artsy film.
yeah. But there's not much dialogue going on, and the ghost won't talk, so you really kind of have to just guess and like I think this is what it means, and that's kind of how like a majority of this movie runs.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and there's a scene at the beginning where when C first goes full sheet.
Yep.
When it's wandering down the hall and the light.
Yep.
So there's a play of light. What is it? And C moves on.
Yep.
So I get what you're saying, John. Was it a choice? Was it a is he stuck? I guess it's left up to the viewer.
Yeah, of course.
And I think that's what a lot of this film is
Yeah,
up
it's
to the viewing interpretation. One of the things I thought was cool was I like the retro aspect, the square aspect ratio. Reminds me of the old days, 126
Yep.
camera film.
Yeah, they did it for The Artist, right? I think they did the ratio.
And
Grand Budapest?
Grand Budapest had part of it, yeah,
Yep.
in the period of how he changes aspect ratio. Wes Anderson changed the aspect ratio depending on the era of the film. So this was set in air, which was cool, but it also left me thinking, JC, you're choosing this format. Are we in that time period for this format or not? So that left me questioning more about why he chose it than the actual movie.
Oh, I see. Yep.
I mean, you could question about that with like how they decide to do like these deliberate long takes in which it would go on and on. You're like, oh, okay, I'm expecting the next cut. Here we go, and it still kept going, and I kind of felt uncomfortable after a while because I'm like, did the film get stuck? Like, that's how I felt with a lot of these. But like, I believe it was entirely deliberate by Lowery and his cinematographer, like to stay with that. But that being said, I did like the cinematography. I thought it looked nice. It worked well with the 4x3.
I read an interview with the director, and he mentioned that he knows this movie's not for everyone, and he understands why people would walk out of this movie. And there's a sequence at the beginning that, because this movie showed at Sundance, and one of the big topics of conversation was a scene with Rooney Mara eating a pie in real time for 5 minutes, and that is in this film.
That's it. Yeah.
That's it, and it's that sequence, along with the long take you're talking about, is gives the audience a time to leave. It lets them understand, like, if you get through this scene, you should be fine for the rest of this movie.
And
if you don't want this scene, this is your out. It's 5 minutes, so you can go.
yeah, and I know like it's more than just like it's her eating pie.
Yeah, no,
it's
no,
supposed to be
no,
like,
no.
It's supposed to be like a thing about grief. We're not making like, haha, look at, isn't that so funny? Like,
No, but it's
testing.
It's testing you. It's similar to like TV shows or stuff that gives you the first episode and it gives you your out. You can test how well you could take this movie. And I think because it's even after Casey Affleck is in this sheet that has two eyes, so it looks like a ghost. And what some people might think at the title, it is not a horror movie.
Not at all.
From it.
It is a but it does take the title seriously, that it is a ghost story. It is a story about this ghost. And I would say, kind of how I said trapped, I think he is trapped because what's cool in the movie is that he sees another ghost in another house who's waiting for someone, and they're not leaving until they're waiting for someone, and later on you see that someone doesn't come, so the ghost can move on. And I feel this one, because for here, this movie goes through time in a really creative way. So as Casey Affleck is in the house and he's not leaving, and you see like more people come in, the house be destroyed, it's built up again. It's really interesting. And I thought seeing like the trailer, I thought it was going to more be like a Terrence Malick movie. And luckily this one actually had a better through line than a Terrence Malick movie, I think. I don't know if Dawn would agree with that or not.
probably not, because I'm thinking this could have all been told to me in a half hour. And I was happy that it was only an hour and a half. I am not a big fan of this movie. And actually, the pie scene is one of the strong scenes.
Yeah.
Because I think that got to a heart of grief. I mean, I got what she did. Because, you know, there are weird things that you go through in dealing with grief, and that was just a thing, and I got that. Some of the other bits of it, you know, I got the sequence of the multiple signs of her leaving, him staying. You know, so got that he's kind of drifting through time. The frustration of people moving in, got that. But for me, this is one that, I won't watch again. I saw it. Okay, good.
It's a really hard sell. When I was trying to describe this to my parents, it was kind of like, so should I watch it? And I'm like, I really don't know. It's hard to recommend. To play off what you were saying about time, there's like a sequence I found that was like maybe like 2/3 into the movie where it takes place like more in the past. And I felt like that was a really good use of just showing how fleeting time can be, and like it's just so distant.
Yep.
And then and then it kind of just made me think a lot of like, you know, places I've been, like the history behind it, and how like it may, you know, we may not know that much, and it's just like there could be like so much more that's happened here, and like a variety of things that have happened there, and I just found that fascinating. And there's a sequence that plays well with that, but.
The movie that we were talking about is A Ghost Story, and if you've seen it and would like to talk about this weird movie, you can call in at 780-4909. That's 780-4909.
To continue with the but. But there's a scene before that. It's this party scene. And it's like, it literally was so on the nose on like trying to tell you how the movie, like what it's supposed to be, that it just it kind of lost my interest for a while. And I felt like with the scenario that was set up, so it's a party and like they're having like this really like existential philosophical discussion about like, oh, your kids are gonna die. And I'm like, what a buzzkill. That's all I kept thinking. Like, who invited this man to the party? Like, I hated that scene a lot. I'm like, can we get the scene out? I feel like if we got rid of that scene, maybe the film would have worked better. I don't know how you two feel, but
Yeah, I think I'm in the same camp, John, that it was over long and over loud. And I think they could have driven that point home a lot more concisely and dealt with more of the ghosts going through time.
Well, I think they did in the scene afterwards.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
they nailed it perfectly. Yeah. And that's like what bothered me. Like, did we really need this? And it just felt like something they needed to put in the trailer. And believe it or not, that speech is in the trailer, but not all of it.
Yeah.
Not the buzzkill parts.
Yeah, it's I wasn't sure what to feel about it, because I think, even though like you mentioned like the next scene definitely illustrates what the guy's talking about, I think for some people who might not fully understand that scene, like the next scene, it does like set it up for a bit, and you can kind of see what's going on in Casey Affleck's head, because since he has a sheet on, he's not very emotive, but I think the way he moves his head, it's kind of like when you see like a puppet, so you can kind of emote and get some sort of like emotion out of it. It is a weird movie. I might see it again, just because it's definitely more of a discussion movie about people's ideas of what the afterlife are, the idea of your existence and longing, and the idea that we like are very like out of this entire universe, we're really small. Like whatever we do, literally doesn't mean anything in the scope of the universe. And I think that this movie kind of brings up that idea of like, what am I doing here? And I think there's another sequence I thought was really creative, was when Casey is trying to haunt this group of this family, and you see him pick up a glass, and from our perspective, seeing him, we just see him holding a glass and just throwing stuff. Like, it looks weird because he's still wearing the sheet, but then we see the other people's perspective, and you just see stuff flying around. So I thought that was a really interesting, creative way of.
Yeah, and I thought that was also like used as like an emotional outburst for the character who's just like frustrated with the idea of someone moving into his home. And And I think really the thing that kind of saves the film for me is the ending. And I'm not going to talk about it much, but it kind of like, it was
very
like this
poignant.
sucker punch that came out of nowhere, and then it just kind of like stopped me in my tracks. It stopped everyone in the theater that I was at. We sat there for a while. So I don't know. It had like it really made me rethink everything. Like it's not like a Shyamalan twist or anything, but just like it was just simple and like it was so weird. Like how I'm like, oh, that's all I'll say, I guess. I don't know if you two have any comments on that. I do have one more thing I do want to mention.
I mean, I think for me, in the passage of time, the scene that we're not going to give a spoiler away. It's just
No.
So it's early in the career, early in the history of the land,
Yes.
and a passage of time that I think does well and ties in with the party scene threw me off, and even the modern day.
Yeah.
The executive villain, that worked for me, but I think I've found other movies that deal with these themes more effectively. So for me, a miss, but I think it's, if you want to go for an interesting ride, go for it. But you guys had thoughts to add?
Yeah, one more thing I want to add. Daniel Hart is the composer, and that score is like, I loved it a lot. It's so like melancholy, and it fit the tone of the film perfectly, I thought. And I've been listening to it ever since I left the theater. And also the song that coincides with the film. It's either Dark Rooms or The Dark Rooms, I Get Overwhelmed.
Yep.
I really like that song as well. It's a really hard sell. I wouldn't recommend it to most people. I'd say wait, watch it at home, and then discuss.
Yeah, and I think, definitely, if you are really interested in seeing like an art house movie, or if you want to watch a movie then have a discussion afterwards, because this is a movie I haven't seen a movie in a long time. I think Swiss Army Man maybe, that you watch a movie that's very odd, but it has a message that you can like talk about. It's more like a discussion piece rather than just it's the complete opposite of Atomic Blonde. So you have one
exactly,
that you just watch and have fun. This one's like, oh, you can think about it, but in a odd way.
Yeah,
But I think,
that pretty much covers it for.
Yeah.
for
All right. And for me, it was more of, geez, this is what Casey Affleck didn't cut his hair for the Academy Award season. But, I think it takes all. And, we're coming down here at the 8:30 time where we're going to sign off. But next week, we've got a couple of films for you that could be fun.
Yeah, we got Detroit and The Dark Tower. Nice Stephen King adaptation.
Yeah.
And in the meantime, Justine is here for Between the Notes. Thanks for joining us. We'll talk to you next week.